The first thing that is huge that nobody is really getting, even people in finance, is a breakdown of the petrodollar that basically happened this year. This is massive. Now I'm going to start with a quote here from a Russian minister. Gas is just the beginning. This will also affect other resources. If they want to buy, let them pay either in hard currency, for us that's gold, or in currencies that are convenient to us. That's the national currency. The set of currencies may vary, and that's normal practice. If there are bitcoins, we will trade in bitcoins. Now, gas historically has been only bought and sold with the US dollars. This is the petrodollar system that the government went over Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil producer, after the inflation of the Nixon taking us off the gold standard, the shock in 1971. Check the website. WTF happened in 1971. Great website. This has been the way that America has been able to print money out of thin air and basically pass that inflation, that tax onto humanity. And even though dollar has lost purchasing power, we've had so much prosperity as a result of being able to do this, and such a privilege that the government now runs at massive deficits. No politician even tries to fix it. And we have 130, I think it's 125% debt to GDP ratio, the largest in history. And I believe around this number is when most of the time, this is when governments and or currencies fail. Okay, so like we're right there. And they're not stopping. They're not stopping the money printing or the interest rate manipulation or any of the nonsense they're doing. Okay, it's only going to get worse from here, which is why for me personally, I am buying obviously as much Bitcoin as possible, as I've talked about many times here. I'm also buying a little bit of gold, which I had some, I sold it, I bought Bitcoin with it. I want to own a little bit now since I have a good amount of Bitcoin. I'm not buying any more silver because I already have a lot of it. So most of my allocation is going to probably be going to gold. And once I hit that target number, I'll get back to buying Bitcoin. I'm still buying Bitcoin daily, a few $1,000s a month, just regardless of price, no matter what, I'll always do that. I'm also mining Bitcoin. I have my miners through Compass Mining, and I'm going to buy some gold. That's what I'm going to do. And then later on, when we have a massive, whatever it is, whatever that massive thing is, whether that is the collapse of the US dollar or some major catastrophic global financial crisis or whatever, I don't know what it is, but when that happens, we're going to see assets, hard assets, real assets at massive discounts. That's when I'm going to go in and buy real estate. Maybe it's residential, maybe it's multifamily, maybe it's commercial. I'm not sure. It depends on where the bargains are going to be. But my strategy is to own as much gold and Bitcoin as possible. I still have real estate. I'm just not buying any more of it right now because it's still so inflated from all the money printing and the entire broken system that we're in. And stocks, like I have some stocks, I'm probably not gonna mess with them. I'm not buying stocks anymore. I'm just not. It's such a manipulated market. Like these paper assets, which are all integrated through derivatives and money printing and Wall Street and all the corruption that is there to serve those that run the game and that benefit from it tremendously. Stocks are another example of that. I mean, we saw a massive correction this year, like literally less than a month ago. We're still, in some instances, massively overvalued. I mean, Apple company, which is one of the best companies on the planet, sure, went from like it was like 1 trillion to 3 trillion in a couple of years because people started using it as a store of value. The government printed like $7 trillion in 2020. A lot of that money was wiped out of the stock market. We still have a long way to go. I mean, with stock buybacks, with giving corporations free money, basically interest-free loans almost, and then them using that to buy back their stocks, which benefits shareholders, like it doesn't produce any economic value whatsoever. It's just another example, the papering of these financial instruments and the price you see, which is people think is the value, is not that at all. It's a manipulated game. And what you're going to want to have going into a game that is so manipulated and still growing, like an abomination that just can't stop, you're going to want hard assets. And that is Bitcoin, gold, real estate. And if you have cash producing business in the real world that does something, yeah, that's going to be great too. This is massive. This is what people don't even understand. Let's get into a little bit of history here real quick. So this is from a newsletter I follow. He's a gold Bitcoin guy. I forgot his name, unfortunately. But toward the end of World War II, in July 1941, the leaders of the free world convened a monetary conference in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to establish the rules for a post-war monetary system. This is now referred to as Bretton Woods I. At this conference, the US dollar was made the international reserve currency for the world financial system. The dollar would be backed by gold and could be exchanged for bullion at the price of $35 an ounce. At the time, though, US citizens did not have that executive exchange privilege due to Roosevelt's 1933 Executive Order 6102, which made it illegal for US citizens to own gold, which is tyranny. Roosevelt was a douchebag. He had a lot of delusions of dictatorship grandeur, and I don't like him. This was repelled in 1975. All other foreign currencies would be pegged to the dollar at fixed exchange rates. The exchangeability of dollars for gold was credible because the U.S. had 650,000 ounces of gold on deposit. In the early post-war period, this arrangement worked fairly well, and the dollar was further supported because the U.S. was the leading industrial nation. Japan and Germany's economies had been devastated by the war. I mean, literally, most people have no idea why we'd want to own gold. They have no idea what fiat is, what the money printer is, what the Federal Reserve is. I was pretty ignorant to most of these things just a few years ago. I kind of had an idea that money printing was bad, that inflation was bad, because I've been reading nonfiction for so many years that it just pops up. But I hadn't done a deep dive to understand why. And then I came into some money and I had to figure out what to do with it. And then I was paying attention to what they were doing during COVID. And then you had a lot of time in your hands and your typical way of life was completely flipped upside down. That made me pay attention to more of what the state was doing. That got me into politics a little bit. I learned what the left versus right meant. I literally didn't even know before then. You couldn't have asked me what color a Democrat was or Republican or anything. I still think politics is a clown show, right? But it's like the system we have. So whatever, at least until it comes crumbling down. Then I got into anarchism, agorism, libertarianism, and now getting really deep in economics, which I've figured out is the foundation of all politics. Economics and markets are the foundation of how humans interact. If we didn't have them, we could all be fine just living isolated as hunter-gatherers in the wild, I guess. We would not have all this prosperity around us, all this safety. The world would be a worse place. It is better with markets. It's better with technology. It's better with all the comforts that so many of us take for granted. And unfortunately, the state, which is the parasite that's been growing on the backs of the productive members of society and the prosperity that we call markets and entrepreneurship, unfortunately, it's growing and has grown so much so that is getting close to collapse. Now, we don't know when that's going to be. We don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know if it's going to be a peaceful We don't know if it's going to be a peaceful revolution. We don't know if it's going to happen very fast. It's going to take, or if it's going to be kind of a gradual 10 to 20 year thing. I hope it's going to be a gradual thing because that's going to be less deaths, less turmoil, less suffering. If it's fast, it's going to be very painful. A lot of people are going to die because a lot of people are not prepared. And the government's going to fight. And, I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's going to be ugly. So I hope that doesn't happen. But I can promise you this, it's breaking in front of our eyes. 2 books to read on this, Fourth Turning and Sovereign Individual. Read both those books. Then maybe get into Rossberg. I think it's Man, Money, and the State, which is I'm just digging into, and I love it. Like, I think it's going to be one of those pivotal books that I wish I would have read 10 years ago. But when you understand these things, when you understand communism and Marxism and fascism, and you understand a little bit of history, just enough to know that central planning doesn't work because humans cannot plan economies, the market does. Only the market can. Any humans that get involved that try to do that, well, human nature is human nature. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely, as Lord Acton said. We know this. We have 1,000 examples of this. We know what happens with fiat currencies. They all die. We know what happens when governments control markets. It creates inflation, and eventually things erode and break down, and it stifles innovation, and it makes everyone worse. The state makes everything worse. Markets make everything better when they're allowed to flourish. I understand. If you're listening to this, and it's not in your purview, maybe you don't really care, maybe you feel helpless because you don't really have a plan or whatever, Bitcoin can be your savior. Literally, right? It can lower your time preference. It can get you interested in these ideas to understand how it all works, taking the red pill per se, and it can give you a plan for protecting yourself and your family. Now, I get it. I know a lot of people that don't really care, or they think a lot of what I'm saying is overblown or overhyped or whatever. I get that. And I'm not going to take any satisfaction whatsoever in saying I told you so. I think about it all the time, actually. And I don't think about it from a place of superiority or feeling good about myself. I picture myself looking around at all the people that I told to buy Bitcoin, to have some extra food and ammo and water and these things, like to understand how the state works, understand the dangers of liberalism and giving the state more power and whatever, right? Understand the dangers of giving up your Second Amendment rights and your freedom of speech and et cetera. All these things that the government has been attacking for years now. Now the mainstream media has become the propaganda arm of the US government, and we see exactly what's going on. Now big tech, part of that too. I am going to take absolutely not an ounce of feeling good when all this comes breaking down. And if it manifests in really, really bad ways, like Revolutionary War, World War III, food rationing, or maybe even people starving to death in a modern place like America, I am not going to be happy about it. I'm not. And even if people aren't starving and the economy's don't come to a grinding halt, maybe we can use gold and Bitcoin and like have some other things to stabilize these things. I'm hoping that that happens, but it's still going to be so freaking painful for billions of people, because billions of people don't understand any of this and didn't prepare for any of it. Some did, and they will be the beneficiaries of the future. That's the way it's going to be. But I'm still not going to be happy about it. I don't want to be royalty or a king in a world that's crumbling around me. I would much rather maintain the prosperity we have and give more individual humans financial sovereignty and get them knowledge of what the state is, what laws are, what human action is, what basic economics is, because most people have no idea at all how economics works. Like they think markets and price gouging, like it's insane. Go on Twitter and look at how ignorant people are of markets. They are all calling for the government to step in and do things. Whereas the financial crisis that we have right now, the broken system we have, is because of governments. It's insane that people are so clueless to this. Here's one by Zeke Arkham. I'm not going to cut off my own penis in order to stop other rapes. I'm not going to give up my own car to stop others drunk driving. I'm not going to keep my hands in my pockets to stop other assaults. I'm not giving up my own guns because others commit murders. This is the danger of collectivist ideas and the idea of we in the state and society. There is no we, there is no state, there is no society. There are individuals that identify within these ideas and these institutions. They're just individuals. And every individual is responsible for his or her own actions. I am not responsible for their actions, nor are you. And if your idea is the state should try to mitigate, control, tax, regulate, ban, whatever, so that the actions of others don't negatively affect you for things that you're afraid of, you don't understand the state, and you don't understand criminals, and you don't understand the dangers of the state, because the state should be the thing you're most afraid of. The state has been responsible, and will be responsible for more death, pillage, and destruction and human suffering than any other thing in the history of Earth. It is and always will be, because the thing itself, the entire paradigm of a few controlling the many, is broken. It doesn't work, and it always leads to tyranny, and it always leads to suffering. There is no we, there's only individuals. And if you're a law-abiding citizen, and you believe that your money should be your money, your house should be your house, and you believe in basic property rights, then guns are no different than owning a kitchen knife or a car or a house. It's the same thing. What you actually want, if you want a safer world from the state and from crazies, is you want as many law-abiding citizens as possible to legally obtain and justifiably use, if needed, firearms. Because the amount of people that have been killed before something like maybe a mass shooting could have happened, or other innocents being slaughtered, you don't see about those in the news. I saw one the other day. Guy shows up to a party with an AR, and a woman with a handgun shoots him. He's the only one that dies. That's what you want. The idea that the police or the state, which will show up later, and then maybe they'll intervene, but in this recent shooting, they didn't. They didn't even enter, and they wouldn't let even parents enter to protect their own children, which boils my blood when I think about that. It makes me afraid for what I would have done. If that's your answer, then just right there, from a physics, I'm talking like gravity, 1 + 1 = 2, time, please show up after crimes are committed, generally. A mass shooter's not going to wait around. He's going to do his work well before law enforcement or SWAT or any of these other people show up. So if your idea that it'll be a safer world and you'll be more protected if only the state and police, have guns, even though criminals will get them illegally, which again, just complete and utter detachment from physical reality and common freaking sense, then I don't know what to tell you. You haven't thought it through. You're going through the typical human nature of, let's think about a very simple narrative. Guy gets a rifle, kills people. We need to ban rifles. That'll solve it, but it won't solve it. Limiting the amount of bullets in a clip won't solve it. Any other of these ridiculous measures will only make it, again, they will only make it harder for law-abiding citizens to get them, which will reduce the amount of people that have them and are willing to use them, which will make it easier for crazies to commit these crimes. Think through these narratives rather than letting your primal, not critically thinking reptilian brain come to these simple sounding ideas about reality, because they're never that simple. And the state always screws things up. And critically thinking is the only way to protect yourself against yourself and against these political propaganda narratives. That's it. That's all I got. I'm running out of energy, but get the next one, put them out every day, and get the Better Human newsletter over at thebetterhuman.co.